Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Innovations in Renewable Energy webinar. This is a fantastic time to be in this space, in the renewable energy space. I was reading yesterday an article on New York Times that electricity generation from renewable energy this year is going to outpace the coal energy. So with that, I think there is still a lot of opportunity to innovate and bring new invention in the renewable energy. And that's what we're going to present today. We have 8 startups we present in this space. My name is Hamid Hadibek, and I would love to start this webinar with you all. We will have our CEO and founder, Saeed Hamidi, giving his welcome speech. And then we have an amazing speaker from Google, Winnie Lam. We have 8 startups, as I mentioned, that they talk about different aspects of the renewable energy. And then finally, we will have a wrap up. So before we start, I would love to tell you more about Plug and Play and our history. This is a building in Palo Alto that our founder and CEO Saeed bought in around 90s. And a small startup called Google moved into that building. And then they outgrew the building and then moved to another location. Then Logitech moved in. Peter Thiel of PayPal moved in, and Danger moved in. So Saeed became a tech investor from a real estate investing business. So that's the story of Plug and Play. And now we are the largest open innovation platform in the world. We help the types of the Fortune 500 companies to engage with the startups and so they can innovate and solve the problems that they face in their challenging path to digitization and innovation. We also have VCs and investors and mentors who help startups do pilot with the corporations. We have a large global footprint, more than 35 offices globally. And we are active in 16 different industry verticals. As you can see, there are like amazing corporations on our platform. They work together, they collaborate with each other and startups to build the future of their industry. So with that, I would love to invite our CEO and founder, Saeed Hamidi, to start with his welcome remark.
Hello, everybody. I would like to welcome you to this event today. You know, new energy or clean energy is, I'm not sure if everybody can see me. Is it correct? Hello?
So Saeedjan, we can hear you, but we are not able to see you, which is okay.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much. You can see my younger picture over there. But I would like to welcome everybody, and I'm very excited about this event today of clean energy and new energy. You know, quite frankly, we were planning to focus Plug and Play attention to sustainability in 2020. And unfortunately, this COVID-19 came upon us, and everybody is now trying to deal with it, and hopefully we will be overcoming it and going back to our focus areas. You know, I can tell you last week I had a fireside chat with one of the large energy companies, Shell from Germany. Even though they are traditionally an oil company, but they really are focusing their attention to electricity and clean energy and spending $2 billion a year doing that. Also, when I speak to Mercedes and Warren Burger and Lear, the automotive industry, is planning to change to electrification and autonomous as soon as possible. It is obvious that everybody has taken a pause, and we are worried about the health of our colleagues, employees, and family. But this world really needs better production of energy, more efficient distribution of energy, and perhaps we can make this the beginning of focusing our attention in production, distribution of new energy in our cities, in our countries. I know that when I spoke to Mayor Park of Seoul, Korea, about now a month ago, he handled the COVID-19 the best I have seen of anybody I know personally in the world. But he is also incredibly focused on building a smart city and helping his city to be cleaner environmentally and use cleaner energy. In any case, this is a beginning of our journey. I have been able, with a great team, to build the best and the largest innovation platform for mobility and IoT. And we feel this energy is a great complement to that. And we love you to join us and work with us to make this the best and the biggest innovation platform in the world, with offices in Silicon Valley, Europe, Asia, and Middle East. Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Thanks, Saeed. That actually everybody told me that they could also see and hear you very well. So I would love to introduce our keynote speaker, Winnie Lam, the Global Director of Energy at Google. Welcome, Winnie.
Winnie Lam at Google. I lead energy initiatives in Google Cloud. I joined Google 15 years ago and played various leadership roles in product management and environmental sustainability. It's really great to see everyone's interest in energy topics during COVID. So let's first talk about COVID and its impact on the power industries. Here are a few observations. Number one, many power utilities have seen energy demand increase from residential customers, and that is not surprising because people are staying home. However, they're also seeing decreases from commercial and industrial customers. And in many cases, that increase in energy demand from residential customers is not enough to offset the decreases from commercial and industrial customers. Secondly, we're seeing a softening of residential solar demand. There are reports from companies like SunPower that demand for residential solar has gone down, and you can understand why. You can understand that consumers are concerned about having a solar installer person come inside their homes during COVID. Hopefully, demand for residential solar is going to bounce back when the COVID crisis subsides. Thirdly, sheltering in place is making energy reliability even more important than ever before. For people in California who are familiar with the wildfire season and utilities' power shutoff programs, not having power while staying home would have an especially dire impact. So there's more curiosity and interest in installing home energy storage systems like batteries now. Of course, COVID is a very fast-changing situation, so it remains to be seen what COVID's long-lasting effects will be. Now back to Google. A lot of people wonder, how is Google involved in the power industry? As it turns out, we've had over 10 years of expertise in the power industry, and that is because Google uses a fair amount of power from our data centers to power all of the things that you're doing on Google searches, watching YouTube videos, and checking your Gmails, etc. We have data centers in many places around the world, as you see on this map here, in North America, in Europe, and in Asia. And so we consume over 10 terawatt hours of energy as of the last environmental report that we published. At Google, we have made a commitment to use 100% renewable energy. And so the 10 terawatt hours that I referenced earlier, back from 2018, 100% of that consumption coming from our data centers and from our offices are matched with renewable energy. We do renewable energy contracts through wind farms, through solar farms, etc., with developers around the world in order to match that consumption we have in our data centers and in our offices. In addition to renewable energy, we also make a commitment to be as energy efficient as possible. And that means using as little energy as possible for cooling our data centers, because as the computer servers, and there's many, many thousands of them running in our data centers, they emit a lot of heat, and we need to remove that heat. So using the most efficient methods for cooling can mean a huge difference in our energy efficiency and therefore our overall energy footprint. Google is a very large corporate purchaser of renewable energy. We have contracted over 5 gigawatts of renewable energy. And you can see on this chart here that as of September of last year, we are by far the largest corporate buyer of renewable energy. And so with that position comes great responsibility, and we take it very, very seriously in plotting a chart for what we're going to do next so that we can lead the way in showing the world how clean energy can be done. One of the biggest goals that we have, I showed on the previous slide that we have hit 100% renewable energy back in 2017 and 2018. Continuing to meet that goal is increasingly challenging as our energy demand increases. And so we look to ways to continue fulfilling our commitment to hit 100% renewable energy. At the same time, we've also set another really ambitious goal, and that is 24/7 carbon-free energy, meaning that we want to be using carbon-free energy, wind, solar, and what have you, even when the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining. And so that's our next big audacious goal. Let's talk about some trends that we're seeing in the renewable energy industry and how technology is addressing them. There are 3 themes that I'd like to talk about. One is, how can we use technology to increase efficiency through visual inspections of wind farms? Secondly, how can we predict failures and anomalies using technology and artificial intelligence? And third, how can we optimize energy storage through things like batteries? So the first trend, and I think this is not surprising to anybody here in this audience, is that renewable energy is more cost effective than ever before. You can see on this chart here that prices for solar and for wind energy have been decreasing over the past 10 plus years. And what that means is that there is increasing pressure on the part of renewable energy companies to be as cost efficient as possible to reduce their operation costs. And there's a lot that technology can do to help make that happen. One example that I'll share here is driving operation efficiency in wind farms through artificial intelligence. So wind turbines are these huge structures that are several hundred feet high up in the sky. And it is quite challenging for humans to inspect when a wind turbine is failing, to inspect that there's a blade and there's damage on it. And so wind farms are increasingly using drones to capture lots and lots of pictures to inspect the condition of their wind turbines. Now, you can imagine that it would be fairly laborious to have someone sitting through and looking through every single picture and identifying, hey, is there some damage being done to a blade here? What can we do about it? And so Google is working with companies like AES, which is a very large Fortune 500 power company with footprint in power generation all over the world. We're working with them to use AI to help inspect their wind farms. So by developing a machine learning model that identifies where damage has happened on the wind turbine, we can then use that to process all the images that are coming through. And the way it works is by identifying examples of pictures that do show that there is damage on the wind turbine, and then we can circle those things through boundary boxes, as you can see in the orange boxes here. We tell the machine, hey, this is what damage looks like on a wind turbine. And therefore, next time if the machine sees a picture like that with these characteristics, it indicates to us that there is damage happening on the wind turbine. Another trend is using technology to predict failures and anomalies. So I talked earlier about using the visual inspection artificial intelligence models to identify damage being done to the wind turbines. Now, the overall goal is to reduce the total unplanned downtime and also to minimize the amount of revenue loss coming from such activities. And we can combine the visual inspections from those images with additional data, which is in the second bubble here, combining that with the wind turbine's SCADA data to get a better picture of when things might fail. What happens in wind turbines is that there are hundreds and hundreds of sensors in each and every single one of these wind turbines. And so we can look for anomalies in that data pattern for things like vibration patterns, etc., to see when things are getting out of whack. And when that happens, it gives us a signal that, hey, maybe there's something wrong. And combining the insights that we're getting from the images from inspecting the wind turbines, it's going to give us more accuracy on predicting a potential failure. And that can be really helpful in preventing catastrophic losses in a wind farm. Now, we also want to combine that intelligence with time-based schedule maintenance, meaning that the operators of the wind farms, they may already be planning to take down a wind turbine for some regularly time-based maintenance, like doing an oil change. If we are predicting that a particular wind turbine is going to fail because of these signals, we can combine that with the time-based maintenance so that we're taking down the wind turbine not multiple times, but hopefully just once, with the goal of minimizing the total amount of unplanned downtime. Now, the next area for optimization is we can combine that with energy price forecasts. Certainly, we want to do maintenance during times when energy prices are predicted to be the lowest. You don't want to be taking down your wind turbines when the energy market is at the highest point from a revenue standpoint. So combining those forecasts with your maintenance schedule is going to help minimize the overall revenue impact. And then finally, you want to combine all that intelligence with your spare parts inventory, meaning that if you're planning to take down a wind turbine for maintenance, you better make sure that we have the spare parts in hand so that we're not caught saying, oh, we're predicting a failure, but oh, wait, we don't have a certain part, so that we can be ready for that. And then the third trend, as I mentioned earlier, has to do with energy storage. We're seeing an increase in the capacity of energy storage. What you see here is a chart from the IEA, and it shows the amount of capacity for storage from 2013 to 2018. And you can see that fairly exponential increase during these years. We're expecting that the forecast for energy storage capacity will continue to increase in the years to come. And there are several business cases for why people want to increase their capacity for energy storage. From a power utility standpoint, batteries are useful for emergency power restoration so that if, let's say, the power goes out in the grid, there's some capacity to ride through these power outages. There's also the business case of using grid energy storage to balance the intermittency of solar and wind power generation. From a monetization perspective, there is the interest to optimize the charging and discharge cycles so that we can make the most amount of money to take advantage of fluctuations in energy prices during the course of a day. And this can happen in particular in places where there is those large fluctuations. I know that last year there were some fairly extreme events that happened in ERCOT in the Texas area where the prices fluctuated to very high levels. So if you had an energy storage system where you can capture that energy during the lower price periods, you can sell the energy during the times when energy prices are much higher. And then finally, I mentioned earlier that Google has our ambition to do 24/7 carbon-free energy. We want to use carbon-free energy at all hours of the day. And we certainly know that the wind is not always blowing and the sun is not always shining. And so during those times, we want to take advantage of energy storage capabilities to help us ride those periods through. So anyway, that is a short overview on what we're seeing in the power industry and particularly with regard to renewables. And I would welcome any questions that everyone has. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Renee. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Great, fantastic. So we have a couple of questions submitted through the Q&A section. And the first question is, how closely do you work with Google Ventures to identify adaptive solutions for energy companies?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you for that. In terms of our work with Google Ventures, we do see things coming through them from time to time. There are many innovative startups out there doing innovative things, be it on energy efficiency, on smart buildings, on renewable energy, etc. And we work with them in a couple of ways. One is that sometimes they want to get acquired or want an investment from Google Ventures. So that's one route. Other times they're wanting to partner with Google and wanting to work with Google as a go-to-market strategy. And so we see both types of deals coming through. And depending on what the situation is, we handle it differently. Sometimes we put it through the partnership program, and sometimes we do our due diligence to see if this is a company that we want to acquire.
Great. So the next question, maybe Winnie, when I speak, if you mute yourself, that would be great with the echoing. That may help with the echoing. So there is another interesting question, which is, what is your advice for startups who are focusing on energy sector?
Well, that's a big question. Startups focusing on the energy sector, I mean, I would just encourage y'all to think about your business case and your go-to-market strategy in addition to the technology. I think that energy is a really interesting space in that there are a lot of big players out there, both in terms of big players who are operators and developers of wind farms and solar farms, etc., and big players like power utilities. I think that in general, power utilities are big organizations that are not the fastest moving. And so to the extent that we can take advantage of that and do things that are more nimble, maybe from a consumer perspective, I think that there's a potential play there. And I think that working with the wind and the solar developers is probably a little bit more nimble compared to working with power utilities, particularly the ones that are regulated. So I think in general, there's business opportunity there. It's a unique space. It's different from, let's say, consumer technology, like developing a mobile app, for instance, because of the large incumbents out there.
Great, thank you so much. I think the next question is, we are in this COVID-19 and the employees all working from home, and Google, I think, also give that option to the employees. Do you have any idea on if there is any way for Google to provide clean energy to their employees at their homes?
Yeah, so I would say a couple of things. Number one, not directly. So we don't say, hey, as a Google employee, you can use clean energy, because that's really dependent on the power utility that you're working with and your local jurisdiction. I will say, however, that we do a lot of work with the local energy markets in the sense that in the places where there isn't an abundance of renewable energy, like in the southeastern United States, like in Asia, we work directly with the policymakers there to make it easier for the market and for the power utilities to provide renewable energy. Because we know that for us, it's not just a matter of us wanting to buy renewable energy for our data centers. Sometimes the challenge is that renewables are just not as readily available in those markets. And so we have to do more than just saying, hey, power utility, or hey, local solar farm or wind farm developer, please build something here. We have to actually go to the legislative piece and work with the market makers to make those changes happen.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. The next question is, what are some challenges to reduce greenhouse gases, and what solutions would improve the carbon footprint?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a big question. You can think about it in several ways. You can think about it from the demand side and also from the supply side. So from the supply side, there is the usage of 100% renewable energy. There is continuing our work with the utilities, encouraging them to bring on more clean energy into the power grid mix. There is working with the wind and solar developers, et cetera, to continue to do PPAs, power purchase agreements. So that's more so on the supply side. On the demand side, there is our commitment to be as energy efficient as possible, like I talked about during the talk. There's another innovative thing that we're doing as well, and that is by shifting loads to where there's more renewables. And so, for instance, when you think about the workloads that we run in Google data centers for your Google searches, for your YouTube videos, etc., some of those are real time. So if you're doing a Google search, you don't want to say, hey, Google wants to wait 5 hours before we give you your search results back because the wind is not blowing. So there are those queries that are real time. And then there's all the other workloads that we can run in the batch mode in the background that is not time sensitive. And so what we're starting to experiment with is shifting those not time sensitive loads to the regions in the world where our data centers are running and where there's an abundance of wind and solar energy. So I think going back to this person's question, how do we reduce the overall carbon footprint? It's really addressing both the supply side and the demand side. And where applicable, we can also zero out our carbon footprint using carbon offsets.
Great. Thank you so much, Winnie. So the next question is that if you have any statistics on how much energy Google and Google users are using, since you are highlighting like 100% renewable energy targets for electricity, but and how long do you think it's going to take time for us or for Google to reach to that goal?
Yeah, so in terms of statistics, there are many. For those who are so inclined, you can certainly read our annual environmental report, and it has all the stats on how much energy we use and other natural resources, etc. I think another interesting metric, there was a study done many years ago about how much a Google user uses from doing Google searches and watching YouTube videos and doing Gmail and that sort of thing. And I recall, and you can Google this, I recall that it's something like for an active Google user for every month, and don't quote me on this, even though I know I'm on camera, it's about the equivalent carbon footprint to driving for a mile every month or so. So it's fairly small in terms of the footprint for a Google user. And I think the reason for that is because we have such a large scale with supporting billions of users. And through scaling up our infrastructure, we're able to make those gains.
Thank you so much, Winnie. The next question is, what forms of energy storage do you feel are good solutions beyond batteries alone?
Yeah, I think that there are many different forms of energy storage. Certainly there's batteries, and within the class of batteries, you have different purposes for batteries. In the talk, we talked about grid level storage. We talked about using batteries to balance out the intermittency of renewables. There's also, in Google's context, there's also the batteries that provide uninterruptible power systems within our data centers. So there's different types of batteries that are designed for different business cases. In addition to that, I think that there are many other great forms of energy storage as well. Hydro, to the extent that the hydro facilities already exist, using pumped hydro as a form of energy storage is obviously a very low carbon way of doing things. And then there's also other novel energy storage technologies being looked into. For really short spurts of energy, there are things like flywheels that are low carbon, except during the manufacturing phase. And there's all different types of chemistries beyond lithium ion that are being investigated all the time. So I think the short answer to the question is it really depends on the application and what is the best form of storage.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Next question is, are you looking at distributed data center models at all?
Well, so I think it would depend on what this person is thinking about in terms of distributed data centers. You saw on the map during the talk that there is a large footprint of Google data centers around the world. And so from that standpoint, it is distributed. From a computing standpoint, we also distribute our loads so that, for instance, we have many data centers running that store your Gmail. We have multiple data centers that run Google searches and things like that. So from a distributed computing standpoint, we're already doing that. And we certainly encourage our external Google Cloud enterprise customers to do the same. Now, beyond the sort of large facilities that we own and operate and construct from the ground up, there's also smaller co-location facilities that we work with as well. And so, I think it depends on what this person is wondering about, but there are certainly many components of distribution in our fleet.
Thank you so much, Winnie. Really appreciate your time. It was a pleasure to have you in this webinar, and I think we are ready for the next step.
Great, thank you so much.
So with that, I would like to introduce our MC today, Milad. He's our venture associate at Plug and Play, and he's going to introduce the startups and also the Q&A that is happening with the startups. Milad?
Great, thank you so much, Hamid, for introducing me there, and thank you, Winnie, as well, for that awesome presentation and answering some questions for us. Yeah, so today we have 8 companies in the renewable energy space, affecting everything from the production to facilitating construction to actually monitoring the assets once they are built. And we definitely don't want to take too much time away from them. For those of you who have been to our events before, I'm sure know the drill, but for those of us that are new, I'd like to go over some housekeeping notes real quick. So everyone, please keep yourself muted, obviously, unless you're speaking. And then, of course, keep asking questions through the Q&A box below. I think everyone's kind of doing a good job right now already. And after the startup presentations, I will go through maybe a question or two live with the startup, but I won't have time to get to all of the questions necessarily. So I'd encourage all of our startup presenters to afterwards just go directly to the Q&A box and type in some answers to the rest of the questions that we didn't have time to get to. But with that, let's go ahead and kick it off. Our first presenter is Jake, and he's going to chat about his company, Anderson Optimization.
Hi, my name is Jake Anderson. I'm the co-founder and head of business for Anderson Optimization. Anderson Optimization was founded in the summer of 2016 to help deliver my technical co-founder's background in the power system modeling and optimization research community to industry. We wanted to create software to help advance the renewable energy industry and help to integrate more renewables into the grid faster. Since then, we built a team of advisors who have all started and exited 8- and 9-figure companies. We've also built our software platform and are actively selling into the industry. What we do is we create software to help automate and improve renewable origination. Renewable origination is the activity of finding and creating an ideal site for a solar farm or a wind farm, or potentially even an energy storage facility. Traditionally, this work has been extremely manual and it requires a lot of technical analysis. This is also done via external consultants, and in aggregate, this led to really high costs and long project timelines. Whereas for us, we're able to create software solutions that help improve these issues. Our current product is focused on early stage land siting for solar developers. Land siting is the activity of finding quality land for a solar farm. Traditionally, this work was done by having to manually consolidate a variety of GIS data tools into single platforms. It required a lot of manual analysis looking for hazards, and it was a very clunky process. In our solution, we automatically aggregate all of the necessary data to do this work, and then we've built in a lot of unique proprietary workflow automation capabilities so that users can come into our platform and find the ideal outputs and ideal land for new facilities in just a matter of minutes. So this greatly reduces the timeline and cost to do this analysis. And in the future, we plan to incorporate more advanced energy system and energy market modeling to these solutions. This helps of renewable developers evaluate things such as basis risk, curtailment analysis, and general energy market and grid effects of their project. Traditionally, this is really complex analysis, so it's done through external consultants. So that leads to really long timelines, typically about a month turnaround, and really high costs, can be anywhere between $35,000 to $40,000 for a single study. For us, we're able to provide a more internal tool so that companies can do this analysis faster, and internally so that they can get the results they need at a much lower cost. And we currently target solar developers specifically in the United States. However, in the future, as we incorporate more modeling tools, we'll also begin to focus on the wind and energy storage markets as well. And with all of this, that creates about a $40 million annual market opportunity, and that doesn't include international markets as well as general industry growth. So between these two, we see a lot of upside and significant opportunity for these solutions. To give you some ideas of differentiation, for our land siting, again, we compete against GIS developers who really, they only provide raw, disparate data, whereas for us, we provide more of an end-to-end workflow automation solution. And as we focus more on the energy markets and modeling, really what we're focusing on is competing against consultants. And again, they have really high costs and long project timelines, whereas we can provide an internal tool with more open models, which really helps to reduce cost and timelines for projects. We're actively selling our software and have over $300,000 per year of annual sales, and we project that annual recurring revenue number to exceed $500,000 by the end of the year. As we incorporate more of our advanced modeling, we expect this number to continue to grow. We're currently working with a number of the largest developers in the industry, companies such as BayWa, S-Power, AES, and they all speak highly of our solutions, and we plan to continue reaching out and growing within the industry. And with all of that, I'd like to thank you for your time and open it up for questions and answers. Thank you.
Great, and thank you. Do we have Jake on the line?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear. So let's go ahead and get some questions in. We have one regarding funding. How much have you raised to date? And if you're raising more, what would the proceeds be for?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have been a bootstrapped organization. We took a very small kind of angel note at the very beginning just to help kind of transition from our previous career paths, but we actually have raised no outside equity funding, and for at this point maintain 100% equity ownership. We have started to consider potentially looking into a funding round in the, call it 6 to 8 month timeline, but we have not set targets for that yet or the exact figures.
Got it. And another question, what is the cost of using the tool as a percentage of the entire project typically?
Yeah, great question. It ends up being a fairly small cost. So for our base level platform, really the cost of the project is really in the upper 4 figures to low to mid kind of 5 figures. And the way we scale our pricing is based upon the number of users they have and the number of states. It's a software as a service platform. So it really allows us to work with both large and smaller developers. Some of our smallest customers are 2-3 person front-end developers. And some of our larger customers, again, as I mentioned, are full-scale nationwide corporation and corporate level developers. So again, in the scale of tens of thousands of dollars to projects at a full kind of utility scale level can really be into the millions. It actually ends up being a fairly low cost, especially since it's an annual subscription rather than a project by project. When you spread that over a company's portfolio, it ends up being a fairly low cost.
Got it. And last question here, I'll ask live. Do you focus on C&I, utility scale, or also rooftop?
Yeah, great question. So we really focus on ground mount. And so that's anywhere from community DG all the way up through utility scale. We don't do much on the C&I and residential. We've looked at some opportunities as we move forward, as we again incorporate some of these more mathematical algorithm-based tools, that there could be some opportunities in that realm. But right now we're really focused on any sort of ground mount is our primary focus.
Great. And thank you so much, Jake, for coming on today and answering some questions.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. And yeah, I see there's some other questions in the Q&A box, so I'll hop over there and continue to answer via text. So feel free to add any more if anyone else is interested. And thank you all so much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.
So next up, we have BuildStream, and presenting is Terry.
Hello everybody, I'm Terry Clark, the CEO and co-founder of Buildstream. Buildstream is a workforce management solution aimed at the infrastructure sector. Now my background is as a project manager at big infrastructure projects, and one of the biggest problems I always faced was managing the temporary workforce. And it broke down into three key areas. Number one was training risk. We would always need workers to be qualified and maintain their training. Now, when we brought these people to work for us in-house, we would invest in their training, but over 2/3 of them would leave within a year because they get poached away by a recruitment agent, and that meant that we'd wasted the time and the money training them up, and it disrupted our project. Secondly, we also had to rely on middlemen recruiters. Now, these agents would come in and would promise to staff us up as quickly as possible, but they came with a high cost. Sometimes they would charge around 30% commission on the workers' day rates. Now, this adds a huge amount of cost to our bottom line, and it's not scalable across multiple projects. And then finally, the speed of recruiting is just so slow. It would take 30 days or more using a recruitment agent, and sometimes 60 days or more if we try to do it in-house using traditional tools like LinkedIn and job posts. To add to that, everything's paper-based. We would spend hundreds of hours every month consolidating timesheets, checking for errors, making sure that people sent them in on time. And then we'd also have to sift through tons of CVs to make sure that the people were qualified enough. Now, my colleagues and I always used to say it would be fantastic if there was one platform where all the workers were registered and all the admin such as timesheets, payroll, and worker experience was all inside one vertical solution. So we could just pick and choose who we wanted and they would turn up, a bit like an Uber model. And that's exactly what we're building at Buildstream. So it's about creating a hassle-free, super quick recruitment solution for infrastructure projects. So because we do everything fully digitally, we're able to charge significantly cheaper fees than traditional recruitment agencies. We're about 90% cheaper. We're also about 10 times faster than a traditional recruitment agency because you can just pick and choose who you want to work with through the platform and we'll do all the rest. Finally, this year we're going to launch income share agreements where we'll work with a client to identify their skills gaps, and then we'll actually fund the temporary workers training. Now that helps them bridge a skills gap without having to take the training cost risk. On the worker side, we're positioning ourselves as their career partner. It's where they come to find the best jobs, to manage all their admin, and to get the best rates of pay. They can also manage their career profiles so that it can be very quickly and easily shared with prospective employers. And our model is significantly better than the status quo for both workers and clients. Because we cut out the middlemen fees, workers earn about $6,000 per year more, and projects save about $10,000 per worker per year, just because we're doing everything digitally and it's far cheaper than traditional recruitment agencies. Now, we launched our beta in February and we're working with some really great companies, and we're always looking to add to this list. We're aiming for a full launch in June this year. Now, our team has the skills and expertise to really help you with your workforce management issues. My background is solving this problem manually from the industry, and I've identified a way to solve this with a digital solution. My co-founder David has built big products in the military before and was also a quality engineer at Apple, and our CTO Jim has over 20 years experience building products that people really love. And we're backed by some amazing investors. We were on the Y Combinator Summer 2019 program. Mini are investors in us, and of course, Plug and Play too. So our vision is to transform the way that the workforce is managed. Buildstream can be used for external workers and also internal teams too. So I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you for listening.
Great, and thank you, Terry. Do we have you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. So we already have some questions coming in. One of them is, what geographies can you cover?
Yeah, so we launched the beta of this in January, and we're currently covering the UK and some of Europe as well. So not in the US yet, but that's on the roadmap for later this year.
Got it. And would Buildstream work to find and work with third-party installers for PV installations to the home?
So that's not our area of focus right now. We're focusing more on large enterprises. However, it is something that could be interesting to us. So I would encourage Richard to give me a shout after, and we would love to talk through that to see if that could be a fit.
Got it. And do you assume responsibility for pre-screening?
Yeah, so part of the process is that we fully vet every worker that comes through. So the worker sends us their insurance and their certifications, which we then check. Everybody gets verified before they go onto the platform, and that's really important. So if a client is using BuildStream to find their workforce for themselves, then it means that they've saved a lot of time asking them to email over their certifications, etc. So yeah, that's a big part of the service. We take that hassle away from the client.
Great. And last question here, but can you talk a bit more about the business model?
Yeah, so we have two tracks that we use. If the client would like us to be the employer of record, so we employ the worker and then subcontract them out, then we charge a commission on the day rate, and that commission is about 10 times cheaper than a traditional recruitment agency. If the client, or even if a recruiter wants to employ the worker themselves, then we charge this as a SaaS, so a software as a service business model, where they would pay us a monthly fee in return for access to the platform and for us processing all the admin on their behalf.
Great. Okay. And thank you as well, Terry, for coming in today. You have a couple more questions in the Q&A box if you'd like to answer them.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll get right to that now. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Moving right along, our next company is SenseHawk, and presenting is Swarup.
Morning, everyone. My name is Swarup Mavanur. I'm the CEO of SenseHawk. At SenseHawk, we're building software to digitize solar. What we do is integrate data and processes through the life cycle to create a digital twin on the cloud. We have analytics modules that enable processes, performance optimization, and LCOE reduction. App.sensehawk.com is Grand Central for all solar assets. Asset owners can look at all of their assets at different parts of the life cycle right here and click on any asset to get into detailed information. Terra is a tool to manage geoinformation. You can layer in geoinformation from traditional manual surveys, from Alta surveys, from drones at different parts of the construction life cycle. You can use this geoinformation, analyze this geoinformation to drive construction automation. Automated leveling and grading, automated pile driving, all of these are supported by our system. ICE and digital construction management tools brings in information from the site into offices and boardrooms, eliminate the need to travel. It actually combines data from drones, progress reports, information entered by site personnel, inventory, civil and electrical data, all of this together to provide a rich view of the site to stakeholders. And combined with the field app, the AI also provides a site automation and reporting capability to every function. And so you can do QC checklists, punch list closure, most activities managed and carried out without meetings or travel. It actually brings you rich visual information from the site into the office. You can actually zoom in and see every part of your site. The AI also supports asset information mapping. You can map serial numbers of every component on your site into the digital twin. Desk is a ticketing and work management solution written just for solar. Combines with all of the other information we have to create a powerful work management system. It supports intuitive dashboards, enables people to monitor work sitting remotely across multiple sites. It also enables remote site management with actual visualization. You can look at your site, look at all of the issues, all of the tickets, all of the work allocated to personnel on the site, look for progress, look for criticality on a single screen. Vault is a data and file management system that's been written for solar, enables you to attach files to any element within the asset. This could be to an inverter, could be to a site, could be to a tracker row, to an individual module, or the entire asset. The app is the most powerful tool in our arsenal. What it does is it brings all the information that we generate and that we analyze into the hands of people on the site. It runs on most handhelds that run Android or iOS. It's map-based. It has GPS. think of it as Google Maps for your sites, along with all the information for your site that you need. It's offline capable. You can create tickets, access work, access checklists. You can complete checklists. You can do automated reporting. You can access files. You can start conversation, raise issues. Anything that you need to do on site is available on the app. What our software together can do is help you increase asset yields, enhance productivity, and improve efficiency, while at the same time reducing the need to travel to sites, reducing costs associated with all of the management of work on sites, and most of all, in the current scenario, enables you to stay safe. Thank you all for your time, and I'd love to get more questions.
We should have some more questions for you. Swaroop, do we have you on the line?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. So one of these questions coming in is, can you share more about your customer traction?
Well, we have customers in 17 countries, and about 20 gigawatts of assets have been through our platform. Some of them are still being used, while others we did portions of their workflow.
Got it. And can you integrate with environmental data such as weather to build a digital twin that predicts output or performance?
That's the eventual goal. Currently, we can do process data, all of the inventory and part information, technical information. We are layering SCADA data on top of this. So the next step is to add weather and other information that comes together. So the idea is one day you should be able to look at any solar site and build a unique performance model for that site based on all of the components that are on site, history of performance, and the weather and everything else.
Okay, perfect. And the last question we have today is, who are your competitors?
Well, we compete with a bunch of different companies. Interestingly, in the solar space, there are several companies that offer point solutions. So we have about 10, 15 point solution companies that we compete with. At the lower end, we compete with drone service providers that also provide some of the data and capabilities that our system does. And at the upper end, while we're getting into more process automation and process-oriented solutions, we compete with the IBMs and the IBMs and the Oracles of the world.
Awesome. So thank you so much for coming in today and answering some questions. And like usual, feel free to continue to answer some more in the Q&A box.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swaroop. So that was SenseHawk, and our next company is SimPower. Simon will present it.
Hi, I'm Simon, CEO of SimPower. If you turn off your refrigerator for, say, 10 minutes, the food inside doesn't go bad, does it? How about if I offered you $500 per year in order for me to have the privilege to be able to turn your refrigerator off for 10 minutes every now and again, making sure the food inside never goes bad? I think you'd probably say yes, wouldn't you? Well, that's exactly SimPower's value proposition to our customers, except we do it on a much bigger scale. So we find processes and machines, such as a refrigerator, that you can turn off for a few minutes to even up to an hour without actually having any major impact on the main process. And we pay the people that own those machines, those processes, for the privilege of being able to turn their machines off every now and again. So why do we do that? Well, it's in order to solve one of the most challenging issues in the electricity system right now, and that is how to balance the supply and demand of electricity. Because traditionally, that balancing is done by the large coal and gas-fired power plants, and they're constantly monitoring the amount of electricity that's being used in the country, and they're making sure that the amount of electricity that they supply matches the amount that's being used. But you can't do that with a renewable energy. So for example, with a wind plant, you can't just ask a wind turbine to all of a sudden produce some more electricity. In fact, it's even more volatile, so it makes the problem even worse. So if we want to move to a fully renewable electricity system, we need a new way of doing that balancing. And that's exactly what SimPower does. So as I said, we find large consumers of electricity. So think about a paper factory or a sawmill, or a large supermarket, or a manufacturing plant. And we connect the processes and machines in their factories or in their plants to our software platform, and we pull those different assets together across the country, and we sell that flexibility, that ability to turn things on or off every now and again, or up and down, to the grid operators. And the grid operators are those whose responsibility is to keep the supply and demand of electricity in balance. And this provides benefits to all parties involved. So the grid operators are able to reduce their costs, they're able to have a more sustainable grid, and they're able to increase their security of supply. For the owners of the appliances, they don't have to pay any money to sign up to our system. We cover all the installation costs, so they basically earn free money, and they lower their energy bill, and they reduce their carbon footprint. And for us, it helps us to realize our mission and kill the business case for fossil fuels and accelerate the transition to an all-renewable electricity system. To give you one example, this is one of our oldest customers, Boria Evas. He's been a customer of ours since 2016. He owns a greenhouse where we every now and again shut off some of the growing lights. That doesn't affect the plants whatsoever. And Boria Evas has managed to increase his annual profits by 8% by taking part in our system. So SimPower is a very mission-driven company. We have about 300 megawatts of controllable power across 5 different countries. That's about the same as a small town. All of our software in our software platform is developed in-house, and we're an independent player. We work with multiple different energy suppliers across the different countries. Thank you for listening. That was SimPower. I look forward to your questions.
And we have some questions rolling in. Simon, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So first up, we have here, what sort of regulatory requirements or challenges do you face, and how do you plan to minimize those risks?
It's a great question, because the regulatory barriers are kind of our biggest barrier at the moment. So you require a market that is actually open to aggregators like ourselves. In Europe, where we're based, the European Union has regulated that all member states have to have their markets open for demand response aggregators like ourselves by the end of the year, by the end of 2020. So that helps. And apart from that, we work with the grid operators in the different countries to help them to enable aggregators like ourselves to play a part in their markets.
Okay, and what hardware is used to turn off the power?
So we have various different integrations depending on the type of hardware, but in general, if there is some kind of automation system, then we often go through the automation system itself, because that gives the customer ultimate control over what happens, which gives a bit more security and comfort for the customer themselves. Okay,
and last question to ask live, but have you seen an effect on equipment life cycle by cycling the power?
So this is something that we always discuss with our customers. The cycles that happen are generally so infrequent that that it doesn't have a huge effect, and sometimes it does have an effect, but the effect is so minimal compared to the upsides that say that it's a risk that's a risk worth taking.
Got it. And thank you, Simon, for coming on today.
Thanks. Thanks for your time.
So some more questions for you to answer in the Q&A box. Our next company is Gila Technologies, and Francisco is presenting.
Hi, everyone. My name is Francisco, and I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Gila Technologies. We started Gila in 2015 with the explicit goal of helping accelerate the adoption of renewable distributed energy resources by developing and deploying novel control and aggregation technologies right at the edge of the grid. As many of you would agree, by properly coordinating and aggregating DRs, you can actually drive impactful change from the point of view of reducing carbon emissions, reducing energy costs, and perhaps more immediate, increasing the resilience of the distribution network. However, there are challenges to deploying these systems in an organized and effective manner. You have a very heterogeneous ecosystem with many vendors, many protocols, many types of hardware. You also have to deal with many different reaction times, right? Different time scales, as well as energy types. And finally, you have to be able to deploy these systems in a manner that allows them to grow organically. It is not very useful to deploy a microgrid that is static, right? Because if a residential community or if a commercial campus grows, requires more capacity, then it's very difficult using traditional control techniques to expand the system accordingly. So we have developed this platform that leverages edge computing and game theory to infuse each DRs with the capacity of making its own decisions on how to best operate to meet specific system-wide objectives. So our HALA Edge computers are installed in front of each one of the DRs, and then an operator or a utility might send signals to the overall fleet, and then our devices will enable each DR to make decisions on how to best operate, taking into account what's been asked of the entire system by the operator, or what is needed at every given second, right? So with this approach, we're able to standardize the system. So it doesn't matter if you're using solar, batteries, or even hydrogen. It doesn't matter which brand of those equipments you're using. We can integrate those systems. It also allows us to encapsulate the fleet complexity, because an operator doesn't have to worry about what each single battery is doing. They can just send a command for the entire system in order to have them react accordingly in a matter of seconds. And finally, by using these edge computers, you're able to add organically more assets as time goes by and as the requirements change. So if you want to increase the capacity of your system, you can add more solar or more battery. You add one of our HALA edges. You don't need to reconfigure the entire control structure in order to do that. These systems have been deployed in several different sites. Just in 2019, we wrapped up a deployment in a vineyard in Sonoma called Stone Edge Farm, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. But we have also worked with utilities in Colorado, as well as Louisiana, and equipment vendors in Albuquerque, like it's the case of Project 3, which was deployed at a US military base. Project number 1, that vineyard, is actually a very interesting use case, and I think it demonstrates a potential path forward for the deployment of these distributed energy resources. So it was originally deployed in 2017, and immediately after deploying our first units there, it had to go islanded for several days in order to withstand the grid disruptions that were being caused by the wildfires in the region. And this has happened every year. Just in 2019, we actually went into island mode in November, and we have been in islanded mode for more than 120 days at this point. That's all I have today, but I am very happy to answer questions as you might have, and if you want to talk more, I'm also happy to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francisco, and hopefully you can speak and hear me. Got it. So some questions are already rolling in. Who is your ideal customer?
So we focus on 3 types of customers. Obviously, the utility in front of the meter microgrid, it's a big one. As you can see from our project in 2019, and we're under discussions to do a couple more projects this year with some large utilities in the United States. We also are working with project developers, people that are doing full DVFOM implementation for projects, so design, the build, the finance, the operations, and the maintenance. So we usually sell the technology to them as well. And finally, we provide our systems to equipment vendors. So this is an interesting distribution channel for us, because it allows us to get into projects that might be smaller than normal, or perhaps in different scales than the utility and project developer sites that we're working with. So those are the 3 main customers.
Got it. And kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, who are your main competitors?
I would say on one end of the spectrum, we have obviously the installers that are trying to do very rudimentary microgrids with PLCs and protocol converters and available hardware. On the other end, we have large incumbents that have microgrid controllers. The big differentiation there is that our system, being decentralized, allows us to scale and get into projects that are fairly more mainstream than some of the niche, even though there might be large microgrids today. And then we don't see them too much as competitors, but they're worth mentioning it. We have the DERMS cloud-based platforms. If they decide to move down into the vertical, they could be competitors, but for now they are actually collaborators. We are agnostic to those type of platforms, and we can connect with them and collaborate in their BBP schemas, etc.
Okay, great. And the last question I can ask live is, what's your business model and pricing?
Yeah, so the business model, so the pricing depends on the size of the site that we're deploying and the type of distributed energy resources that are there. We are fairly traditional. We sell the hardware, so the edge controllers, for a fairly low price. And then we also sell software license. That can range from a couple $100 a year to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on, as I said, the size of the site and the DRs.
Great. Thank you so much, Francisco.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you, everyone.
So our next company is Ensemble Energy, and presenting is Sandeep.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Sandeep Gupta. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ensemble Energy. Ensemble's mission is to accelerate the clean energy revolution. The problem we are trying to solve is that clean energy power plants lose $32 billion annually because of unplanned maintenance, lost energy, and inefficiencies in operations. That leads to higher cost of energy from clean energy. Solar is close to $1 billion, while wind can be as much as $17 billion annually. Predictive analytics is one of the ways to reduce these operational losses. The current state of the art, it doesn't really work. OEMs do not share all the data. Data is not very digital. It sits in silos. Data is really meant for reporting, not analytics. Gathering relevant data is inefficient. Homegrown analytics tools essentially don't really scale as well. And customers don't always have the domain expertise required, and they depend a lot on the OEMs. This leads to a lack of value creation, high false positives, lack of actionable information from predictive analytics, and leads to frustration by the customer. Ensemble's solution is a predictive analytics platform that combines the power of AI and domain expertise to enable data-driven operations. We make data analytics ready, work with customers, extract the data from these silos, bring it into a single platform. Then the most important element is creating these physics-based models that, combined with machine learning, are accurate, give prescriptive actions, and they are explainable. Our platform can cut these operational losses by more than 30%. We have predictive, which is a key element of our platform. But in addition to that, Ensemble also provides reporting, visualization, energy optimization, and other capabilities within the platform. Again, with the same idea that if you now are trying to do each of these with 3-4 different platforms, you lose that knowledge sharing between these elements. The Ensemble team is very passionate about clean energy. We have been working in clean energy for 50 years combined, 15 years for me, and Rob and Eric have been working in clean energy for 20 plus years. This really is, again, a passion for us. The team that we have, the technical team, and our investors are also passionate about making a difference in clean energy. We have a team of software engineers, data scientists here and in India, and our investors include Powerhouse Ventures, Plug and Play Ventures, Intellis Capital, and some clean energy angel investors. Ensemble solution is different from our competitors by providing from digitalization to solution and also very, very accurate prescriptive actions. Some of our customers' comments can be seen here on the slide. Ensemble has already created $1.5 million per gigawatt in value creation annually. That comes from increased revenue, reducing unplanned maintenance, failure prevention, and improving efficiency of analysts and site personnel by more than 25%. Ensemble is on 3.5 gigawatt of clean energy assets, 2,000 plus turbines and solar inverters. We have close to 200 million rows of data or equivalent of that with unstructured data and some of our customers here. We are looking for investors for our Series A. We completed seed round in 2019 and looking for some discussions with Series A investors, customers to implement Ensemble solution and improve their bottom line, like other customers are doing. Customers interested in pilots for hydro and storage as we are building those modules. We're also looking for partners for data gateway and edge computing solutions and remote inspection solutions. Please contact me at the email or you can reach us through our website, and please join us in accelerating the clean energy revolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. Do we have you here?
Yep. Good morning, everyone.
Great. Good morning. So good to have you again. Some questions here are already posted. So one of them is, how long would implementation and integration take, for example, with a large utility?
It does vary a bit how their data is saved and how their database is today, where the data is coming from. But we've been able to do it sometime as short as 4 weeks, and sometimes it can take somewhere between 4 to 12 weeks.
Okay, great. And regarding the competition, is it possible to explain in more detail your distinguishing factors?
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the things that we constantly see, with our customers when they work with, pure data analytics providers, you just essentially get, some anomaly. And the anomaly doesn't have kind of any physics background in there. And some of these industrial IoT plants, people who worked in this know that there's a lot of data issues. So you really need to understand the data that you're looking at. So we've combined the physics element of it that allows us to kind of separate a lot of this noise from the real signal. And also the second piece is really the solution. Now you've identified an anomaly, what are you going to do about it? Customers then have to go to a consultant and figure that out. Again, it's a very inefficient process. We can kind of bring that all in one platform.
And last question here to ask live, but how do you work with weather data and forecasting?
We actually have some partnerships where we are working with companies who are really excel in that, and we kind of bring that data into the platform for some of the grid integration and forecasting purposes, and we should have that component also within our platform in Q3 of this year.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sandeep. And as always, if you'd like to get in contact, you can just email our startup there through the email on the screen. And Sandeep also can answer some more questions in the Q&A box. So thank you.
Jump over to that.
Next to present is Adrian, and he's going to chat about his company, Terrafuse.
We're Terrafuse. We're building AI technology to accelerate climate prediction at the scale of the entire planet, providing data to inform decisions that promote a resilient Earth. The impetus for us to start the company was the conviction that climate and climate change are the defining issues of our generation. We are seeing ever more climate events and extremes that have become more frequent in the last decades, yet our ability to make predictions has not kept pace with the magnitude of the changes. This is because current technology for modeling and predicting climate is based on an antiquated paradigm of numerical modeling, whereby very complicated equations defining climate processes are encoded by hand by teams of PhDs and solved on big, expensive supercomputers that are typically outside the reach of most institutions. This is a highly computation-intense process that takes months to create predictions and simulations. It's impossible to assimilate the vast volumes of data that we're generating and collecting more and more on the Earth's climate. And even after all this work, the data that comes out of the process is still not granular enough and timely enough to inform business and policy needs to be actionable in general. We address this issue with our AI emulation technology. An AI emulator is a machine learning architecture that learns to behave like a physical system, such as wind or wildfire. And we build AI emulators by fusing together many sources of remote sensing and simulation data about climate. We use the AI emulator to scale climate prediction across large regions by learning physics in some regions and transferring that learning to other locations and make predictions without having to solve the physics. We're building our minimum viable product, the TerraFuse data platform, on which the AI emulators get deployed after being validated with customers. And we are developing applications around prevention, mitigation, and planning of climate risks to infrastructure, in particular renewable energy and built infrastructure for the energy insurance markets. Within renewable energy, we have focused on the wind generation market, which is the highest growing renewable resource, 30% year-on-year growth. We have been working with partners across the value chain of wind project development, from site assessment to operational market bidding to ensuring the revenue from the wind farm, to show how our data can create value with multiple touchpoints. A second market that we have focused on is insurance, in particular on wildfire for property and grid resilience. And wildfire has emerged as a first-tier peril in recent years, with insurance carriers incurring significant losses, especially in California and large markets such as the West. However, all of the underwriters we've been talking to point to another lack of good data, really, to price and select wildfire policies, leaving a lot of doubt on the table. So the need for more actionable climate data is evident, as our pilot projects in energy and insurance across the world show, from Asia, Europe, and the US. We have the team to be building the solution for the climate prediction problem with machine learning and climate expertise, as well as clean tech go-to-market expertise. I'd be happy to take questions, so thank you for your time.
Great, and we do have some of those questions. Adrian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hey,
awesome, and I can hear you as well. So one question is, in terms of geography, what countries are you targeting first and why?
We've started actually with the U.S. Market initially in California, especially in the on our work on resilience for grids, for power grids with the wildfire, but throughout the country as well on our work on wind. So that's so California first, U.S. Certain portions of the U.S. like Texas for our wind work, and then Pacific Northwest for the work we do on wind. For wind power, but also we've started some projects or pilot projects in Asia, again around our wind renewable energy sort of product in China. With actually we're working with the largest wind developers in China and in India, respectively.
Got it. And what sort of public entity partnerships might you require to scale?
Oh, great question. So on the resilience work, we've actually had some tentative interactions with utilities, so energy utilities, SPG&E, PG&E in California. The angle here that we're pursuing is first, understand the value that we can create in the private sector, in the insurance market and in the renewable energy market, in the wind market, and then bring in public stakeholders into the orbit as needed to create an offering, kind of an ecosystem to create value to the private sector.
Okay, great. Thank you, Adrian. And as always, there's some more questions for you waiting in the Q&A box.
Sure. Thank you.
And last but not least, I'd like to invite Enapter to present, and presenting will be Thomas.
I'm very happy to have the opportunity today to talk to you a little bit about the IM electrolyzer and Enapter. My name is Thomas Krometzka, and I'm the head of strategy at Enapter. We have set up in Apter an award-winning company, as you can see, to do a few things differently in the hydrogen sector, but I'll be coming back to that topic in a second. We're talking hydrogen here today because we believe that the hydrogen is the missing link in the energy transition, and when we talk about hydrogen, we absolutely mean green hydrogen. Electrolyzers, our product, are a way to turn sunshine and water into a green fuel, a green gas that can be used in any kind of application, be it in synthetic fuels, in electricity storage, or in many direct use cases in the industry for heating, and absolutely what we need when we are thinking about how to decarbonize our future. Our electrolyzer is different from what you see in the market because it is designed as a product. You can see here that it is a form factor that can easily be fitted into a 19-inch rack. It has a very low production rate with 500 norm liters per hour and a power consumption of 2.2 kilowatts. But what you will immediately understand is that this device can be stacked to infinite sizes. So you can combine as many of these modules to achieve the flow rate that you're needed. And here it is mirroring the principle, for example, the solar panel, which is exactly similarly set up as a small and modular device that you can combine into any kind of size. We're different because the rest of the industry is building large systems, and the analogy here is the mainframe and the PC that disrupted the computer industry in the 80s. And we hope that we have a place in the market with the offering that we can bring to our customers. We're not only focusing on hardware, we are also very much exposed to software. We believe that energy companies of the future do need to have a hardware and a software offering. And this is why we're developing a very unique energy management system that is low cost and allows the residential energy storage solution to benefit from a good energy management system, as well as the industrial solution that customers might be looking for. We have use cases already in 33 countries in the world, and I think it is more than 100 customers today. You can see on this one a typical seasonal storage use case where hydrogen is used to produce power in winter times. But our electrolyzers are used in very innovative use cases. Here it is a power to heat use case where district heating is provided by the hydrogen that we produce. We use our hydrogen refueling stations for drone, for aircrafts, for cars, for many different applications. We have a bunch of industrial customers who are using hydrogen in float glass manufacturing, nitrogen purification, as you can see here, but also in ammonia production and other cases. Power to gas, an important one as well. And our goal is ultimately to drive the cost for hydrogen down to a price of 150 euros or less per kilogram in terms of CapEx. This requires massive scaling efforts, which is why we're investing a lot into automated production line and ultimately make this green hydrogen reality happen. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Thomas. Are you on the line?
I am.
Perfect.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. So one of these questions is, how do you see the current energy markets being impacted or impacting hydrogen demand?
Well, I mean, I think hydrogen will impact the energy markets. We believe that hydrogen is the oil of the 21st century. It's the only way to decarbonize fuels and gases. So it will have a huge impact.
Got it. And somewhat of a technical question, how do you make sure that the oxygen produced during OER reactions does not reduce the efficiency of hydrogen production in the electrolyzer?
We have a very efficient process, which is separating hydrogen and oxygen in the cell. Actually, our electrolyzer is one of the most efficient devices on the market if you compare it to traditional alkaline or PEM electrolyzers. And this is due to the patented buildup of the stack, which is producing hydrogen at differential pressure and very high purities straight from the cell.
Great. And what's the max capacity of H2 output you can produce?
So since our unit is standardized, the output is half a cubic meter of hydrogen per hour, but it means that you achieve scale by just stacking the devices. So if you need more, you stack more. If you need a few, you put them in a rack. If you need a lot, you put them in a container. So this is how you achieve scale. And ultimately, you arrive at a very resilient system because you don't have one electrolyzer that if it fails, your complete production is standing still. But if one module should fail, then all of the others are still working, which is quite an advantage that our customers see.
Great. And last question here, but plenty more to answer in the Q&A box. What in particular makes your machine novel?
What makes it novel is that the particular technology, AEM technology, there is no other company that has a product in the market. And if you research about AEM technology, you will see that many companies are trying to muster that technology. We believe that it is ultimately combining the best of the two major technologies in the market, traditional alkaline and PEM electrolyzers, to an extent that is taking the best of both of these technologies. So the cheap materials of traditional alkaline, but the high purity hydrogen production, and then combining it in a new product, which we believe in a few years will be cheaper than the other technologies. All we need to do for that is scale, and this is what we're currently setting out to do, build a large-scale manufacturing plant to scale the technology.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
And just to assure you, Thomas, and everyone else in the chat, we are going to leave open the Zoom a bit, despite the fact that you were the last presenter, so that you have time to answer some questions. But with that, we're done with the presentations today. I hope everyone enjoyed that or got something out of that and found some meaningful companies they'd like to be introduced to. As always, Plug and Play is happy to facilitate that. It's all for me. Thank you for sort of bearing with me as I try to MC this, and I'll pass it back over to Hamid for some closing remarks.
Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this webinar. As Milad said, we hope that we were able to bring you some innovations that is happening in the renewable space. Please follow us on LinkedIn to know more about the events and things that is happening in the future. We have a couple of more exciting webinar that is coming up soon, and feel free to reach to us at energy@pnptc.com. We would love to get connected and see how we could collaborate. Thank you so much.